Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Tuesday, January 17th, 2017. I'm Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. Coming to you from a somewhat gray, standard issue, Gem City. If it's Tuesday, that can mean only one thing. Duane Long. Duane, how are you this fine morning?
Oh, I'm confused. It's January in Ohio, and it's 50 degrees. So I'm confused.
Speaking of change, Duane, we are within hailing distance of National Signing Day in early February, and Ohio's recruiting class seems to be coming together nicely. But down the stretch here, there have been some changes. Obviously, with the exit of Tyjon Lindsey, who has since committed to Nebraska, there seems to be an all-out, full-court press across the United States of Ohio State's coaches looking for another receiver. What's your vibe on the need for another receiver, the guys they're going after, and just the overall vibe?
Well, for me, the whole thing is confusing. Not so much going after a receiver, but what we're going after. We're talking about distinctive positions, Dan. We call them wide receivers, but there is a difference between a split end, also known as an X, and a flanker and a wingback. Some people call it an H-back. I refuse to do that. It's not an H-back. An H-back is a tight end fullback hybrid. It is not the position that has traditionally been known as a wingback, and that's what I'm going to call it. Anyway.
Let's help out the fans here. The X would be Noah Brown. The Y was the other receiver. And then the wingback to you would be kind of the Curtis Samuel role.
Exactly. That's what they are.
Carry on.
And
carry on.
Different. You're looking for different types of athletes. The X is a big guy. You're talking about a guy that's you want 6'2" or better. You get some guys that are a little bit smaller than that sometimes. But you're talking about a big receiver. He's not a good fit for the Y. He's definitely not a good fit for the wingback. But that's who we seem to be going after. We're looking at a bunch of guys that are 6'4" and 6'5", and we've got a number of them. We've got 5 guys who could, well, actually 6 with the commitment of Jalen Harris. We've got 3 already on the roster. We got 3 coming in, and we seem to be going after another one. I don't get it, especially when you look at wingback. And until Eric Glover-Williams moved over, we were looking at one guy on the roster who's a good fit at the position, which is McCall, who may be needed at running back, considering we've only got 2 other running backs. I just don't get who we're going after. It makes no sense. That's the confusing part for me. Bill Kurlick mentioned that they want to keep 12 receivers on the roster. That's fine. When you're playing 3 at a time, that's fine. I think it's a little excessive, but okay. But why do you want 7 who are only a good fit at one position? It doesn't make sense to me. So, and then you got KJ Hill, who is one of those interchangeable guys who could play both the split end and flanker. So I'm just not I don't understand. Especially we got limited space. We really should be looking at an offensive tackle if we can pull him in. It could be Thayer Munford is not an elite guy. He's one of those guys that I would pass on him, but, we have a need, and he really did improve quite dramatically as far as I'm concerned from his junior year to his senior year. So that makes a lot more sense to me than going after another split end.
So you'd like another Lindsey-ish type player to replace him?
Yeah. We only have 2 of those guys on the roster right now. And, I just don't understand who we're going after to fill a role that, you've got to recruit for position. You have to prioritize your needs instead of just saying, okay, I'm going for the best athlete available. So it's just not making much sense to me what we're doing right now. You know, recruiting a receiver, okay, but they're different positions.
As we're discussing this, this kind of popped into my head. Is it possible they're doing this because they're going to move Paris Campbell to the H? Because I've always wanted a bigger H. You know me, I wanted to play Jerome Baker there. Is it possible that they're moving Campbell to the H?
I mean, he could fit there because of the speed factor, but I guess that I look at him and see a guy that I'd rather see him at running back. Just hand him the football. He does not seem to be, his inconsistency catching the football is an issue as far as I'm concerned. They could move him there. It just, I just don't think he's just not fitting in well as a receiver. Too many drop balls. He's been hit square in the hands too many times to drop the football.
He's not a natural pass catcher.
No, he is really not. But it does make better sense. He's not going to be asked to run routes and catch the ball down the field as much. He's going to be catching the ball out wide and in the flats and that kind of stuff. And he will get the ball handed to him at the H. So that's a better fit than where they have him right now.
Agreed. Let's talk about possible transfers. We've heard a lot of names, so I'm not going to go down the list. Of the names you've heard, which ones jump out as, either guys are going to miss or guys will be a good fit that probably need to head elsewhere?
Well, the first one that jumps into mind is Kyle Trout. I was never a fan. When I go back and look at the offensive linemen that we've recruited, to me, he's the only guy on the roster that I did not agree with the offer. I just did not think he was, an offensive line, just anybody. We see the videos of players and they're highlighted. An Ohio State caliber recruit, Dan, we shouldn't need the little highlight thing. He should leap out. And I watched his film and I could not distinguish, his didn't have that. And I could not distinguish him from any other offensive lineman on the Lancaster football team. Just did not leap out at me. Never did. And, that he has not risen up the depth chart does not surprise me. He's one. Another guy that's just buried is Alex Stump. I mean, he's buried. I liked him coming out of high school. I thought it was a good offer, but there's just so much talent at the X, that's been there. Brown's now moved on. Gibson's gone. He just got bypassed by superior talent, and there's 3 guys coming in that are going to be better than he is. So he really should think about, if you want to play football, you want to be a Buckeye, just want to stay there. Okay, that works. Yesterday, Alex mentioned Stephen Collier, that he would not actually count against the 85. I'm not interested in, pushing a guy out if he's not going to pick up a scholarship slot. So, that works for me. He's not going to play here. And I keep the name, I'm just consistently hearing that Dan Connor's not going to be part of the football program next year.
Nick Connor.
That shows how buried he is. I can't even remember his first name, but I hear he's not going to be part of the program next year. He really wasn't this year. There's a lot of confusion as to why he was not involved in the program this year. So those are a handful of guys that I see moving on. You got to look at the receivers. James Clark has really never mentally gotten over breaking his leg. Never did it. He really should think about the fact that he doesn't want to be on the football field, is what I understand. He's just kind of shell shocked. And Johnny Dixon needs to quit on it. I love the guy coming out of high school. I thought he was going to be a star here. he arrived with knee problems, and they've just gotten worse. So, we got some guys that they're done. Another guy that you got to think about, I call him permanently injured, Kevin Fetter. Loved him. I thought, a guy that size that could play defensive tackle and do so effectively, that was, I really had high hopes for him. But he's constantly hurt. He needs to think about life after football. He needs to quit on this. That's another guy that we got to wonder about what his future is.
Yeah. With Feather, he's one of those big guys I think you take a chance on, but I think there's always a risk when you take a big guy who has never really consistently gone up against guys his own size. It can be a real adjustment. I know Mike Adams, his adjustment to college football was a little tough because he had never gone up against anyone his own size. I'm not sure how much he liked getting punched in the mouth by guys who are also 300 pounds. They get adjusted eventually. Maybe Fetter won't be able to do that. I think you brought up some interesting names. Yeah, Stump and Connor really never established themselves. I guess in every class you have some guys who they're going to get recruited over their head. But I just don't think, if you look at the linebackers they had, coming in, and the guys they already have on the roster, I don't see Nick Connor jumping Keandre Jones. Certainly don't see him jumping Baron Browning. So I think Nick Connor might want to, like you said, head for Toledo or even Cincinnati. I want to talk a little hoops here. Huge win for Mata and company against Michigan State. The question really is now, does that stave off what's going to be a disappointing season? I think they're now, either 1-4 or 1-5 in conference. Your thoughts on the win against Michigan State and maybe the view on the team quickly, the program right now?
Well, I tell you what, I watched the Wisconsin game too. That was the first game I've watched. And I was just so disappointed in what I saw. The game was 30 points. It got to 30 points difference, and it stayed there pretty much the rest. I think the lowest it got the entire second half was 24. I could not believe what I was seeing, an Ohio State basketball team getting so thoroughly outworked, outplayed, and just didn't belong on the same court with a program. You're going to have tough games. You're going to lose games. What is it? The 76 Indiana team was the last one that went undefeated. So you accept that, but just to get thoroughly just taken apart, that was very disappointing to watch. And then to come back and have the effort we saw against Michigan State, just the effort, Dan. They just seemed to play harder. It was, and I'm thinking, what in the world's going on here? I'm one of those. I stayed in Mattis Court. I was still there till late last year. Really, it was recruiting that got me that this little point guard they're bringing in that we beat Western Kentucky for. Ohio State shouldn't be competing against Western Kentucky for recruits. That was really when I finally went off the reservation. I really think he's had such a great run. And, I think that Fred Taylor, I remember Fred Taylor, he played for national championships. You've got to consider him, and maybe even Gary Williams. Gary Williams is a great basketball coach and had this program at a pretty high, a pretty high level. But Thad Matta is arguably the greatest coach in Ohio State basketball history. But it just seems like his time is done. We're not competing for elite recruits anymore. Just forget about it. The best in the state are leaving the state. I'm trying to remember the kid's name at Kansas. The way I understand that we weren't really even in that
Luke
one.
Kennard. Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I was at Flying to the Hoop. It's a huge tournament, national tournament that was here in Dayton. I went on Saturday for a game, and then I went yesterday. So I got a chance to see, yesterday I got a chance to see Darius Baisley and Justin Aarons play. But over the course of the weekend, there were some other teams there, including Prolific Prep with Gary Trent Jr. and Huntington Prep, which is another factory school. I don't know how to say this without, but Baisley and Aarons were not among the top 5 or 6 players at this tournament. Maybe long term you could project Baisley based on the fact that he needs to gain some weight, but there were at least 2 or 3 players on Huntington Prep, and at least 2 or 3 on Prolific Prep, and then at least 2 or 3 on a team called Wheeler out of Georgia that just had better, stronger players. Gary Trent Jr. is just a man. I don't know if he's a one and done. He may think he is. The talk among the people that I was sitting with was that he is. I'm not sure he's that good. But there was a kid on Huntington Prep named Keldon Johnson who was better than anybody Ohio State has coming in, who's a junior, who I knew Wayne was in trouble because LaChristian Smith is their biggest player, good 6'4", 6'5", and Keldon Johnson was Huntington Prep's shooting guard, and he was a little bit bigger than Blue. So they are not getting the top players. I hate to say that out loud. It's painful because it means the future is not going to be as great, but we will have to see. Now, these guys have some time to get better for sure, so we can wait on Baisley and Aarons a little bit, but that time needs to be spent in the weight room, hopefully. We appreciate Duane stopping by. We will have plenty more on this to come. Stick around, Bucknutters. Don't forget, later today will be the final release of the 24/7 Sports 5 stars. They released 32. There'll be some movement among Ohio State prospects, so keep an eye out. Have a great one, Bucknutters.